Today I'm going to cover the differences between the Model 1, the Model 2, and the Model 3 Sega Genesis consoles, including how some of them are incompatible with certain games, and how well they interact with certain add-ons. And yes, I am familiar with the CDX, the Nomad, the JVC XI, and the Laser Active Genesis module. Sega had its dick in everything back then, but in this video I will only be covering these three models, and just the American versions of them, which is more than enough to talk about. Here are the years that each of the models were manufactured. It's obvious from looking at them that over time they managed to shrink the Genesis, and that was because they consolidated the internal components and removed certain features. That's very apparent if you compare the various ports on these models. On this Model 1, there is an extension port, a channel select switch, an RF out, a large audio video out, and a power adapter port. There's also a 3.5mm audio jack on the front. On this Model 2, you can see that they only have the AV out and a power adapter port. Everything else I showed on the Model 1 is gone. Now, even though they both have an AV port, the Model 2 one is smaller, so the cord that people used for the Model 1 does not work on it. The power adapter port is a different size too, so you can't use a Model 1 adapter on a Model 2 and vice versa. Even if you crammed it in there somehow, it would probably cause issues since the two models have different electrical requirements. The Model 3 has the same sized power ports as the Model 2, but the power adapter that came in the box with the Model 3 does not have the specs to function on a Model 2. But a Model 2 power cord will function fine on a Model 3. Are you confused yet? We're just getting warmed up. As 1% of the world knows, Sega also created the Sega CD and the 32X, which are add-on devices that connect to the Genesis to expand its capabilities. The Sega CD itself had two models. All of these items are compatible with the Model 1 and 2 Genesis, although some combinations are more aesthetically pleasing than others. Attaching the Sega CD involves this connector here, which is on the Model 1 and the Model 2. The Model 3 does not have that type of connector, so the Sega CD will not work on it. When it comes to the 32X and the Model 3, officially the 32X is not compatible with it. However, there are two different types of boards within the Model 3, the VA1 and the VA2. If yours has a VA1 inside, you can perform a mod that makes it so that the 32X will run on it. The VA2 cannot be modified in that way. When it comes to the Model 1s and 2s and the 32X, most of the time everything works fine, but certain boards of the 32X and certain boards of the Genesis models have some small issues when they combine. It gets a little complicated, so I'm just going to refer you to this page on consolemods.org that summarizes the issues, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Another add-on is the power base converter, which lets you play Master System games on the Genesis. It works fine on the Model 1, but on the Model 2, it blocks the ports on the back. So you need to remove this part of the plastic. I've seen other sources say that you have to remove the shell on the Genesis, but I'm not sure what they mean by that. Regardless, I don't think many people want to be removing large pieces of their game systems in order to make them work. When it comes to the Model 3, it officially isn't compatible with the power base converter, but the ones with the VA1 board inside can be modified to have it work. Be sure to let the ladies know you have this knowledge. Now let's discuss compatibility with the games themselves. Around 99.5% of the Genesis library will play just fine on any one of these three models. To understand about the few exceptions, we have to understand TMSS. It stands for Too Much of the Sonic series. Just kidding. It stands for Trademark Security System. It is a protection added to the Sega Genesis motherboard to keep unlicensed games from playing on the Genesis. You can tell if your Genesis has TMSS just by booting up a game. If you get this screen, your system has TMSS. It's something that was added in the middle of the Model 1 generation, so some Model 1s have it and others do not. However, all Model 2s and Model 3s do have it. That's that's where Zany Golf comes in. EA released this as an unlicensed cartridge, so it didn't have the necessary TMSS requirements inside of it. Then during the middle of production, EA and Sega hammered out an agreement, and so Zany Golf became an officially licensed game, and they began adding the TMSS requirements to all Zany Golf cartridges going forward. So basically, there are two versions of this game floating around, and I don't think there's any way to look at the packaging or cartridge to know which one you have. You have to just plug it into your Genesis. The ones with the TMSS inside will work on all three models of the Genesis. The ones without will not work on a Model 2 or a Model 3, and they won't work on Model 1s that have the TMSS screen at boot up. The same story applies to Budokan, the Martial Spirit, and Populous. However, because EA never bothered to put the TMSS requirements into any of those, none of the copies of those two games will work on a Model 2 or 3, and they will not work on a Model 1 that has the TMSS screen. Another incompatibility is with the game Gargoyles, which will not work on a Model 3 that has the VA2 board inside. Then there's Virtua Racing, which will not run on any Model 3. I have found a few people who say that Turrican, X-Mutants, and Time Killers will not work in any Model 3. They may have been talking about the European versions, so if you know for sure, just let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you know of any other incompatibilities between games and certain models of the Genesis. Next, let's talk about sound. The Model 1 does not output stereo sound out the back. Instead, it only does it through the headphone jack. The Model 2 does output stereo, and it does it out the back. The Model 3 does not output stereo in any way, though if you do a mod on it, you can get stereo out of it. And you can also do a mod to get stereo out the back of a Model 1. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice here, but I'm just going to power through this. In terms of sound quality, things get complicated. I mentioned before that the Model 3 has two boards. The other models have different boards as well, and they have a lot of them. Certain boards have better quality sound than others. It gets complicated. I'm going to put some links in the description that talk about what boards are best and how to tell what board you have, but in a nutshell, the best option is to get a Model 1 that has the words high definition graphics printed on it. That'll get you the best overall audio. And here's a very interesting thing. If you own a Sega Genesis Mini 2, it actually lets you pick between Model 1 sound and Model 2 sound in the options, and you can hear the differences within the games that are on the Mini 2. So that kind of gives you an idea of the audio differences we are talking about. Ideally, it would have you pick between the different boards instead of the models, but here's some examples of the sound differences as emulated through the Mini 2. The counterpoint to all this audio talk is that you could just not worry about this stuff and just appreciate whatever Genesis you happen to have. And besides, if you learn how to do certain mods, none of this matters because you can improve the sound on the ones that have the problematic sound. Also, it should be noted that every version of the Genesis has capacitors inside, and if those go bad, that can affect the sound regardless of the model and the board. The visual quality between the boards also differs. It sometimes has to do with what type of video encoder your Genesis has, and that could be different regardless of the board. For example, some Genesi have an issue with rainbow banding, which sounds like a Magic the Gathering ability, but it's just a small visual difference. Others produce a darker image, others have more saturation, others are more pixelated. It's way too much to cover here, and it's honestly hard for me to grasp, but I will put links in the description that will explain it in great detail. And you know what else is detailed? Some of my other videos where I explain gaming stuff. I did one for the Sonic Lock-On cartridge, so be sure to check that one out. Thank you for watching.